Hey folks, my name is Rene Enriquez and you are watching Uncensored.
This is Rene Enriquez. Nickname Bootser. Blackhand of the Mexican Mafia. Prison gang politics.
Welcome back to another episode of The Making of the Black Hand. I converted another video and have that up right now, and we're going to run it, seeing as you guys liked it so much. I'm going to try to make this a lengthy episode. Let's see how it works out. But we're going to play the video, and we're going to do commentary as to what was going through my head at the time. And remember, for all those people who haven't seen the other videos, this is how the Black Hand, the book, this is its inception right here. These are interviews with Detective Richard Valdemar. It's actually Sergeant, one of the heads of the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department task force on the Mexican Mafia, and Chris Blatchford from Fox 11 News. Chris and I collaborated on the Black Hand, the book that you guys may have heard of in the past. But this is how we started it. This is us sitting down in an interview room in Walnut, California. I was being housed there by the FBI. Just doing a little recap for you guys in case we have a new viewer on. But it started with this, interviews. We later transcribed some of this stuff, and it went right into the book. And you'll recognize some of this language from the interview in the book. So without further ado, let's kick it off. Transferred to Tracy now. Tracy, yeah. School, because it was there that you were learning how to do war. Mm-hmm. You're doing that's what they call the gladiator school.
Why did they reach out to you, do you think, at that point? Because at that point you weren't a killer, right?
I was already established as a camarada, as an up-and-comer. I was always taking care of business for the carnales in San Quentin, and I was known as a trustworthy individual. You pretty much establish. See, it's like a campaign. Much like a politician goes on, even though you don't seek it, you're on a campaign, and everything you do contributes to your resume. So everything I did towards this point is saying this guy's a trustworthy camarada, and we're going to bump him up, and we're gonna. It's kind of like the blood initiation. Yeah, let me stop it right there. It is like a campaign. It's a silent campaign because you can't go and say, "Hey, I want to join the Mexican Mafia." In fact, in that point, I had no aspirations, and that's the funny thing about it. I never had planned to become a carnal, a Mexican Mafia member. I'd never planned any of that. You know, I didn't set out in this path. But once you become a camarada, like a real camarada to the organization, not this Edgar generation 19-year-old guy dropping the N-word saying he's a camarada, right? Those aren't camaradas. This contemporary application of that word is non-existent in my mind, right? Because they aren't camaradas. There are very few camaradas to the organization. A camarada is a guy who's on the cusp of being made, or will never be made, but is a trustworthy, known guy to the organization. That's what a camarada really was, right? So when you start doing these pegadas or these hits for the organization, you know, you get on this path, right? And you don't know you're on it. You're on a train that's moving 1,000 miles an hour, and you don't even realize it because you're right in the mix of it, right? And you go on this campaign, right? Because it's all about your reputation, your ferocity, right? How ferocious you are, how violent you are, and how much palabra you establish among the camaradas, right? That's really what this is about. And I'm looking at this video again, and I see like this, it's just coming out of every pore. I see my image right there, and it's like this arrogant mofo right here. And I look at it, and I'm like, wow, that really was me. But again, you can't participate in this lifestyle with these type of men and look at the ground. I mean, you have to project command presence. People have to recognize you when you walk in, right? And when you step on a yard, they know you're there. That's the kind of mentality you have to have. Although there are some members that have been very quiet, wallflowers, and they don't fare well. It's the guys with the bigger-than-life personalities are typically the guys who float to the top. Doesn't mean they stay at the top. It just means they float to the top. And then maybe later on they float. Here we go. Somebody has to do a hit. You know, you got to keep doing hits, and they got to see that you're reliable.
Who first approached you?
Roy Boy from 70s. His name is Roy Rivas, ex-member.
Where?
DVI. Yeah, to do the hit. Yeah, it was for Frankie Mays and Kiki Mays. And Gator from Florencia, I forgot his name. Mais or something like that. Mesa. Yeah. They're both no good anymore. But Roy Boy became a member himself later. As a matter of fact, he was a notorious killer in his own right. In fact, everybody I ran with in Tracy became a member. Tablas from Florencia, Daryl Baca from Artesia.
That's the truth. All the crew, like the top guys in the crew, right? The guys who did the real work and they glowed, right? They shined, and they became members. Got a funny story about Tablas. He was a Christian before he was even a carnal, right? I remember him from San Quentin. I may have said this before, but we used to call him Brother Art. But once his brother Braulio got made, he came out of the closet, right? And not in a, like, I mean this in the sense that he put down his Bible and became a gangster, right? And I'm going to do a whole thing on that. But, yeah, we're talking about DBI here. It's a gladiator school. That's where you went to learn how to eliminate people. Because you were going to pick up a knife if you were about anything. If you were repping the hood, you're going to learn there. And that's the place I did my first hit. And the instance I'm talking about is Roy Boy Rivas, Mexican Mafia member from San Diego. Really good dude, really humble. I remember he used to stutter a lot, but the guy was tall. I mean, unnaturally tall for a Mexican. Tall guy, but he walks up to me first day on the yard. He says, "Hey, you're a boxer?" I says, "Yeah." And he hands me this fierro, this knife, right? And he says, "Hey, this guy's got to go. Will you do it?" I says, "Yeah." And there are two Mexican Mafia members on the yard, Kiki and Gator, and they want it done. So me and you guys may have heard of this guy's name, Puppet Martinez, Puppet from 18th Street. We went and did a hit. I'm going to explain that right now.
Wow, it's just Top from El Rio, me. It's just a whole slew of guys that got in at that group. I mean, because we were the wrecking crew. I mean, we were the crop that was coming up, the soldiers. We were putting in work, and the brothers were right there seeing us personally, stab guys, do hits, organizing skills, our leadership capabilities. So then we just became the shot callers on the yard. The brothers get slammed down, and we're communicating with them through the hole, and we're running the yards. It was then that I did my first few hits. I'd stabbed that individual in a Vago biker named Chainsaw. Pretty notorious in his own right. Big old guy. I was scared to death to do this hit. Guy was as big as a house. I was a little skinny guy. And I went and stabbed him, and it was a kamikaze hit. That's what we used to call them, kamikaze hits, when you do them in front of everybody. Suicide missions. We were doing suicide missions at the time. We brought those out, in the county jail. Later on in my career, we started doing kamikaze hits.
Yeah, the instance with Chainsaw, I think it was Ronald Howard, his name was. I might be misremembering that, but I remember the instance quite vividly. I'd seen Daryl Baca in a visiting room, my homeboy, Night Off Marticia, the Carnal, and he told me that somebody disrespected him, right? That this Vago biker had given an individual that Daryl had previously stabbed. Daryl called this guy out in the yard, and he found out later that Chainsaw had given the guy a knife against Daryl. There was another white guy, right? Daryl ended up stabbing him on the yard, and he went to the hole for it. He was in O-wing, I believe it was, or I forgot what it was called back in DBI. He was in the hole. And I'm in the visiting room one day, and so one of the porters in the visiting room says, "Hey, that old man wants to talk to you," or something like that, right? Or it's something funny. So I turned around and I saw him, and I went and hugged him, and we talked. And it was then that he says, "Hey, I need a favor. Can you take care of this for me?" And I told him, "Sure, I'll take care of it." And that's the reason I hit the Vago, that guy Chainsaw, because he had armed an individual against Daryl Baca. And so I went and did the hit, and boom, boom, it was done. So yeah, Daryl was my homeboy. I had seen him on the streets. We didn't run together on the streets. I saw him a few times at parties and stuff like that in the hood. And then when I saw him in DBI and he asked me to do that, of course I was going to do it. I mean, we had like four homeboys there, but he came to me to do it. So I did it. You know, about a week later, I go out to the yard and boom, boom, I nail this guy, chainsaw, and it kind of cemented our friendship. It cemented our friendship, and I mean, we became good friends after that, as Cardenales as well. Unfortunately, that fell apart later in the years, but we'll get into that at some future point. I'm going to run this now and see what we have going on here.
But we'll get into that later. And then I transferred to Folsom right after that.
What year was that?
That was 1984. First day there, I get stabbed right off the bus. You know, this is this thing. I consider myself a tough guy at that point at Camarada, and I get right there, and right when you drive up, you go to the patio for R&R. R&R is receiving a release right there in the big yard. And we're sitting out there, and this is the point in time when you can take cigarettes in the bus. So I'm smoking a Camel non-filtered tough guy, and I'm looking like a tough guy. And everybody's, we're having our prisoner talk right there on the patio, waiting to be processed in. And then all of a sudden, this big steam horn goes off at 3 o'clock, and it scared the heck out of me. So it goes, oh, just scared the heck out of me in front of God.
Yeah, if you've been to Folsom, you know that steam horn. It's the count. Something to indicate the count. It's around count time it goes off. But it is so freaking loud. It's like, if you imagine what a steam horn sounds like in prison, it's that. It's that. And I remember that. And I felt foolish after because it made me jump, right? Then before my PTSD, now everything makes me jump. But yeah, it was funny. It was funny because it got everybody off guard. Everybody was startled, and we all kind of chuckled after that.
Everybody. It was one of the most embarrassing moments I had there in Folsom. But I get there, and a few hours later, we go to ADSEC. This is the fish roll. That's what it's called. And an individual from the Nuestra Familia is just released from a segment in that prison called 4A. I don't know he's a norteño, which is a northern Hispanic, an individual from the rival faction of organized crime in California prison system. He stabbed me with a fork because he wanted to go back. He didn't want to be out there with us, I guess. He was sent on a mission. And I was just an unfortunate individual who happened to be next to him because we didn't know each other at all. He just knew I was a Sureño from the tattoo on the back of my neck. So he stabbed me with a fork, and I ended up going back to shoot too.
So let's stop that right there. Let's unpack that a little bit. Yeah. First day in Folsom, I remember that we're going to Chow Hall. We're on Fish Row. We all have red jumpsuits, and we're going to the Chow Hall. And this is at a time when they give you metal forks and metal spoons. And we go to Chow, and I'm walking up the stairways, and I see this guy on the second tier landing, in one block. This is one block, yeah. Shoe 2. The shoe 2 is on the other side. C and D are shoe, but A and B section, Alpine and Baker, are overflow and at Seg, right? And Fish Row, like half of it's Fish Row. So we go there. So as I'm walking back to Chow, I see this little guy. He's standing, and his hand is cupped like this inside his long sleeve jumpsuit. You could see my arm. It's cupped like this, and I could tell he's holding something. And the first thing that goes through my head is, what did I do? You know, what did I do wrong? Maybe I did something wrong at Tracy. All these things are racing. Like in that instant, like I know I'm gonna get whacked. But I walk up to him, and I see him. He pulls out something, and all I see is metal, and we start fighting. Boom, 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 boom. We start fighting, and he stabbed me right here in the cheek. I still have a little scar. But it's with the tines. He stabs me with the tines. It's not sharpened or anything, so he's just poking me with a fork. And we're fighting, boom, 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 and they fire 2 rounds at us from the Ruger 223, the Mini 14. Boom, boom. And I socked him a few times, and I remember getting hold of his arm. I got his hold of his arm with my left hand somehow, and I had the sleeve, so he couldn't really swing, and I was hitting him. And they came, and I remember I dropped a pack of Camels. I had a pack of Camels in my top pocket, and I remembered I bent down to pick them up before they took me because I wanted a cigarette after that. I'm gonna have me a cigarette. But the cops take me, and my feet didn't even touch the ground. They just picked me up in the air, and they were running me down the stairs, and they ran me back to the shoe 2, right there in shoe 2 in Folsom. there's a desk right past the gate. They slam me on top of the desk, and they're roughing me up. Like, call me MFer and this and that. And then they look, and I'm bleeding. I'm leaking. And they say, oh, he's the victim. So they thought I was the assailant, right? So they were roughing me up. But they bring out this Stokes gurney, and they said, get in it. I said, no, I ain't getting in that gurney. And they start, getting aggressive with me. You're going to get in that effing gurney. And I said, I ain't getting in that gurney. I said, I ain't getting in that gurney. I'm walking. I ain't hurt. And I walked all the way to the infirmary in Folsom. I think it's in 3 block, adjacent to 3 block and 2 block. I walked to the chow hall. I do this walk of shame because I'm leaking. And I remember I had on a brand new pair of tennis shoes. So I'm trying not to leak on the tennis shoes, because anything with blood on it, they confiscate for evidence, right? That was the policy back then. So I'm trying to walk without getting blood on my shoes. And I remember when we came back, and I was still thinking all this time, what did I do? What did I do to get hit? Why did I get hit? I didn't do anything wrong. And I go and they do the 7219, and they take pictures and all that stuff. And I refuse medical treatment. Like, I'm all right, I'm fine, And they clean it up and they stop the bleeding. It was just 2 little holes right here and a scrape behind my head. Really, it was a superficial wound, but it was a facial wound, so it bled a lot. And I go back, as I'm walking back to go to the holding tanks, because I have these little cages right there in chute 2 right before the yard. I see him, and he's standing in his cage, and he's holding a red headband, showing it to me. And he's saying, Puro Norte, Puro Norte. And I said something back to him, something derogatory. I remember that, like F you or something. I don't know what the hell I said, but I said something back. And it was then that I knew he was a Norteño. They got out of 4A. And here's where this comes in, right? To him, he stabbed an M. And I think that's where the NF goes wrong, or all these individuals who believe the NF killed so many damn cardenales and hit so many cardenales. I wasn't even a cardenal then. I was just a sureño, right? A camarada. And but in his mind, he whacked an M. And that's not the case, because we counted when we knocked down an NF member, right? That's fact. There's plenty of them that got knocked down and never to get up again. But they've only done it to one cardenal. And I say that with complete sincerity. People are going to say, no, that's not the case. You're lying. You just don't want to admit that the NF defeated you. I don't care. I'm not from the M anymore. Why would I lie? But I think that's the misconception. Anybody they stab is an M. Oh, he was an M. We got him, And certainly a couple of camaradas got killed by them, but only one cardenal got killed by them. So I just thought I'd throw that little tidbit in there.
I met Alfie Sosa, Raymond Triac, Joe Morgan. I'm only there for 10 days, but they're sending me communications, kites on lines, and I meet a few of them.
Did they know who you are?
I introduced myself.
When you showed up.
Yeah. And they called up to Widow Shryack, says, hey, Shy, you have a homeboy here by the name of Boxer. And you're immediately embraced by your homeboys who are Mexican Mafia members. And those are your representatives, really. Kind of like you have a senator that represents your district.
Yeah.
They represent my area. So I immediately go to them. I tell them my story, and I send them my paperwork, and they say, okay, you're okay. You're cool. And so they released me after a classification process. They deemed that I wasn't the aggressor in the attack, that I was merely a unfortunate victim. The one time I was victimized in prison.
You were basically collateral damage.
I was collateral damage, yeah, I was collateral damage. So they released me to the mainland, and on a fluke, I ended up in the cell with Mexican Mafia member Sammy Villalba. Sammy Villalba is known as Negro from Orticia, my homeboy. This guy's been raised around my family all my life. He used to, I had been in Solidar prison with him before we were involved in all the Mexican Mafia stuff. We talked, and he was actually running that block.
Uh-huh.
I remember this. It was just serendipitous that I get moved to 3 block, and I move right in the cell with Sammy. A good friend, good buddy, man. I knew the guy. I'd been to Solidar with him, and we heard about him for years. I had never met him before that, but I ended up in the cell with him. No, let me retract that. I met him in Soledad, and years later I end up in the cell with him in Folsom, and Sammy's running the place. You know, he's a camarada. They have like before the terminology bloqueros and all that. They have like a camarada that runs each block. This is at a time when all the Mexican Mafia members are in the shoe, and we're in the middle of a racial war. It's the war with the blacks against the Mexican Mafia. So it's everybody on site, right? And I get there at a time of controlled, what they call now is a modified program, right? We're eating in the cells and no showers, but we're getting ready to come off into modified program. Let's run a little bit more about this. Maybe I'll tell you details if it doesn't fill it in, because I think I'm going to tell the story right here in the video.
Shot caller for that block. He was an MA rep, and he was on the fast track to membership. Although his brother was a Nuestra Familia member, he was still on the fast track towards membership because he was considered a good camarada. And this was pretty amazing that he could have a brother that's a Nuestra Familia member and still be in the Mexican Mafia. You know, it's just like a contradictory in every sense of the word. I mean, as being a member of one organization and having to kill your brother in another sense, which is something I never really believed Sammy would do. I know Sammy quite well. He's a real good friend of mine. We end up in the cell and he tells me, yeah, we're getting ready to get down. There's some black individuals who got a whack on the tier. And I'm glad you're here because I was going to do it myself. So I tell him, all right, I'm game. Let's go. Let's do this. And just the next day, they get him. They take him back to shoot. They're slamming him down. So he leaves me the knife and he tells me this guy right here has got to go and this guy's right here has got to go. And you got to do it now by yourself. I said, oh, man, it's terrible. I'm on a tier in Folsom Prison. We're at a time of racial war. They're rioting in San Quentin and Folsom. And
Now, how old are you now?
I'm about 22 years old. And I'm on a tier all the way in the back of the tier with nothing but African Americans. I got to walk all the way down the tier between African Americans, and it's just a precarious spot for an individual like me to be. There's another individual by the name of Weasel from Venice on the tier. And I get a wire from the next guy who takes charge of the building. They tell me, you're coming out for showers right now. Everybody's coming out together. It's a controlled shower. Take care of it right now. And I tell them, hey, I need somebody. They tell me, Weasel's right there. He's going with you. So I tell him, listo, Jimmy's ready. He says, yeah, it's okay. So the cop opens the door. My target's right next to you. He just got released. And another target's right here. So I just walked out of the cell and just started stabbing this guy. I stabbed him one good time and he took off running. And I took off after the other guy and I just scratched him. But the COs are standing right next to us, this close, and we're doing the hit. I mean, we're putting it down right there on the tier. And they start firing from the Mini 14.
These are black guys.
These are black guys. This is racial assaults. I'm not a racist. I want you to understand that. Mm-hmm. I've never believed in those philosophies. But this is a type of war, and it's demanded by the cultural group, the organization.
So you're pulled into it.
Well, you have to do it. If you're not, you're ostracized. If you won't function, then you're considered a non-participant. Mm-hmm. Then you're isolated and targeted. No matter what, you're going to be victimized. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty much, like I said, the peer pressure, the social dynamics of function in prison. Mm-hmm. That's how it works. You have to participate. You can't sit back and abstain. You can't say,
well, let me clarify that. You can say no, right? You can, there's a couple different avenues you can take. You can go SMY. I mean, you can go into prison and be a Christian and not be bothered. But if you're an active gang member and you're a Sureño, you're going to participate, right? You're going to participate, but you willingly do that. It's not this thing like where you're forced to do it. That's a misconception, right? And the incident itself, I remember this real well. Sammy Villalba left a knife like about that big. It was massive. It was aluminum, double-edged, work of beauty, right? And I remember hitting the guy. I drove it all the way in his back. He was standing towards the bars with his elbows up on the bars like this, and he had a broom in front of him. He was a porter or a tier tender, kind of like a janitor for the cell block. And I got him. Right? And the whole tier stampeded. It sounded like a freaking stampede. Like, everybody started running down the tier. And I recall feeling the percussion of the Mini 14 when they fired at me. There were 2 shots fired. Boom! And I felt the wind go by me, right? From the round. And then the second one, boom! I heard it go, whoo, the bullet go by, right? And I was like, oh, shoot. So I do this, boom, boom. I hit these two guys. One of the guys, I scratched him, right? And I went a few cells down, and I threw the knife over the tier, and you could hear the knife hit the ground, bling, bling, because I'm up on the third tier. And I get into a crowd, and I squat down in front of this guy's cell. His name is John. He's an AB associate. And he says, "Hey, brother, you got down. You got down." He says, "Just kick it right here. I got you. I got you. I got you." And I never met the guy before. But he ends up sending me this big ball of controlled substances when I'm in the shoe. He says, "I'm going to get at you." He says, "You got down, little brother." And he's an older white guy, and I'm just a kid, right? And I didn't even see Weasel, right? And then I hear blink, blink. I hear his knife go, right? That's okay. He was down the other end of the tier getting down, right? But I took off right then, right? The cops saw us. They didn't identify us. They didn't do that back then. It was just business, and everybody knew that, right? But they line us up on the bottom tier, and they go around feeling everybody's heartbeat. And mine's going 1,000 miles a minute, right? And so's Weasel's. And they feel our heartbeat. I say, "Yeah, you too, come on." And they take us to the hole. And we go back there. And while we're sitting right there, I'm asking Weasel, "Did you get him? Did you get him?" He says, "Yeah, I got this guy, I got that guy." And I said, "Okay, cool." So we at least got, 4 guys, right? We got a couple guys each, And then I get the incident report, and they give you a graph of the body and all the wounds, right? And the dimensions of the wounds. And he had a long rod. It's called a rod. It's like about the size of your pinky, and the circumference, but about 12 inches long. And there were no wounds like that at all. No wounds. So what he did was absolutely nothing. I remember I had a little paisa Sally at the time too. He saw me, wrapping up and putting the handle on the knife. He says, "Hey, ¿qué está pasando?" I says, "No, quédate aquí en la casa. Voy a hacer algo ahorita. Y no te metes," right? I just told him, "Hey, I'm going to do something right now. Stay in the cell. Don't get involved." He's just a little fat paisa, right? And you could tell as soon as I pulled out the knife, he got scared, right? I told him, "No te preocupes. Es negocio," right? I just told him, "Don't worry. This is business," right? And once I told him what I was going to do, he got calm, right? And I just told him to just kick back, and he prayed for me right there. I remember he prayed for me, and I said, "I'll be fine. Don't worry about it. This is what we do. But I kind of like the fact that I just made him stay in the house. I just told me, "Bro, just kick it. This is not your deal, right?" And he stayed in the house. I don't know his name. I can't remember. I can't remember what state he was from in Mexico. But I remember one day he was picking at his ear. He was just picking at his ear, right? Just digging in there. And he kept digging at his ear, and it started bleeding. I said, "¿Qué chingados estás haciendo?" And he actually ended up pulling out the little rubber thing from a syringe, because some substance abusers take the plunger from the syringe and rub it around and get earwax on it to lubricate it so it goes up and down in the barrel a little easier. Well, he had one stuck in his ear for over like 5 years. He told me, he says, "This has been stuck in my ear, and I finally got it out after 5 years." And I just remember that incident with that guy, and a good little humble paisa, and he ended up staying in the house that day. But I later discovered, I'm digressing, I apologize. It happens when I'm telling these stories. So we end up in the shoe. We go to the shoe for racial violence. And I got to assert, like, I'm not a racist, I think I have biases like anybody else, right? But I don't judge any man for the color of his skin or his beliefs or anything like that. I just don't. If you're a man, you're a man. If you're a turd, you're a turd. That's all there is to it. So this was just war. And I was doing what I was supposed to do. I was engaging in war and trying to eliminate an enemy. So we get to the shoe, and we see the incident reports, and it comes out that Weasel didn't do anything. So I remember telling Shy, "Hey, man, this guy didn't do anything, man. He said he did this, and he didn't do a damn thing. In fact, I didn't even see him during the hit. I was there putting it down, and those are the only wounds the guys had, is the ones that I inflicted, right? And Weasel ended up, Weasel from Venice, tall guy, he ended up getting They tried to eliminate him on the yard right after that, right? And because he didn't do anything and he lied about doing it, right? It's frowned upon, right? He could have said, hey, the cop was right there, I couldn't do anything, but it didn't stop me. But he didn't perform. And lo and behold, he ended up paying for it. So let's run this video and see what else.
You know what, I don't believe in that. This is survival in its basic animal form. You have to survive. You have to survive. So you go and do these things. As horrendous as they are, you do it. And I didn't have any compunction about stabbing anybody. I'm not a saint. I'm not, postulating like I have some moral repugnance for what I've done. I mean, I'm sorry for some of the things I've done. But that wasn't one of them. That wasn't one of them. So we go ahead and we do this racial assault. And I stab this guy, and they start firing rounds at us from the Mini 14. And I throw my knife, and I get down on the ground. I squat down with there's a group of white guys right there. I blend in with them. And the guy, I see him down the chair. I'm looking down the chair. The guy's laid out on the floor. He runs down all the way down to the officer's desk, and he's stabbed up. He goes to the hospital, and the other guy's just scratched. And we're immediately apprehended. We're the only Hispanics on the tier. So they know it's racially motivated stabbing. There's only 2 Mexicans there. Get those guys. So we go to the hole. It's then that I meet members like Jesse Moreno, Rocky Luna was there again, Widow Shryak, Corwin Elmore, who later became my sponsor in the Mexican Mafia, Black Dan Barella, Angel Valencia. These are all notorious, high-ranking Mexican Mafia. Joe Morgan was there. There's about 20 guys there, all Mexican Mafia members.
And what are you feeling at this point? I'm doing pretty good here.
I'm doing pretty good. I'm on the fast track.
Yeah.
Well, it's not even then that I understand that I'm being viewed. I just know that I'm embraced as a soldado, as a camarada, a true camarada. At that point in time, they give you anything you need.
Hey, go back to the first stabbing you did. Was it at Tracy?
It was at Tracy.
How did you feel then about that?
I was elated. It was like a sense of power. I mean, you do something like this, and I know it sounds sick. I know it really does, but you get jazzed up on it. I mean, your adrenaline's flowing.
You know what? That's the truth. As sick as it sounds, you get this like a sense of accomplishment. It's the adrenaline, the fear of being shot, the recognition you get. Because after you do a pegada, after you do a hit, everybody's looking at you like, oh man, this guy whacks people, right? But there's all that mixed into one, and I know it's pretty crazy to think that you get excitement out of doing it. I don't know if you can call it excitement. I think it's more sheer adrenaline. And after you're kind of like floating on a cloud, right? Like you got that done, you got away with it. And this is at a time when you could do hits and get away with them. You could stab a guy or do an elimination, a complete and successful elimination, and get away with it. There were no 1030s. There were no they're going to get apprehended the same day. None of that. You could do it. In fact, they would just, after the elimination, they would just pick up the body and the knife, and if it was a complete elimination, then they would lock it down for a day and do their investigation. But the next day, we're up and running. It was a pretty different time in the prison system, And with that, folks, I'm gonna end this here because they just transitioned back to something else, and I'll bring you the second part within a day or so. I hope you enjoyed this narrative. Again, 1,000 different stories pop up when I'm listening to it, and I hope you enjoy like jumping into the mindset of what I was thinking and feeling then, and what all this entails, because you're getting like a thumbnail right here. And even when I watch this after, it's kind of like, wow, yeah, I see. It's like, it gives another dimension to the video, because you can watch a video and see a guy talking. It's just a talking head without any context. And when we give it context, it brings another dimension to it. So I really hope you're enjoying this series. My pleasure to bring it to you. As always, folks, stay safe. Have a great weekend. Peace out.
This is Rene Enriquez. Nickname Boots.